Hi, everybody. I'm Luke, and what I wanted to share today is a bit of what I've learned over the last decade about how to pick the right problem, which when you start out in a big endeavor in your life or building a company or an organization, when at that beginning point, things become set in a certain way once you choose what you are doing. So it's quite important you choose what you're doing. And I'm going to do this by showing you three really dumb ideas that I've had the privilege to be involved with that turned out quite all right, and why they actually exemplified three aspects of picking the right problem, which I believe are picking a problem that's strategic, and that's inspiring, and that's achievable. So the first really dumb idea is PayPal. And I remember when I was schoolmates with Max Levstrom. We went to the University of Illinois, and he had this thing he was showing me. He was going to build security using this elliptical curve cryptography on mobile devices. He thought everyone is eventually going to have mobile devices in their pockets, maybe even multiple devices. And they had to be secure, and you had to use this new type of cryptography. And I was bored to tears, and I thought it was actually not a very good idea. And however, in the brainstorming about PayPal, we thought about the problem. We actually thought about the problem. And when Peter Thiel joined the company, he suggested, well, what about securing financial transactions? And why finance? It's like, well, is Peter running a hedge fund? Is he interested in money? And actually, no. The reason we chose finance, the reason PayPal was a financial company, is because in the broadest sense, and this is what I mean by strategic, money controls everything in the world, and and currently it's controlled by some fairly dumb institutions. It's controlled by national governments that don't necessarily have the best interests of the people or the economies at heart. Some governments, they're controlled, the currencies are fiat currencies. Other ones, they're controlled by cartels of banks. And we were quite distraught at this. Like, let's create a competing currency, and actually let's create a competing banking system was the original vision. PayPal was going to be a bank, and this is something that through the help of Elon Musk, who I'll speak a bit about later, we actually acquired a small bank. And as we built up the company, the plan was to take over the entire financial system in the world. And the difficulty of that challenge was quite inspiring. But it was also very strategically valuable. And that's what made it a great company. We chose a problem that would ultimately have great value for the human race if we were able to solve it. The second aspect is inspiration, the level of inspiration it could bring to people. And I want to pick another dumb idea here, which was building a rocket company. And my friend Elon Musk told me a few years ago he was building a rocket company, and this could never become a viable business. And he himself actually was talking at TED on Thursday, and he said, the quickest way to make a small fortune is to start with a large fortune and then go into the space business. And we were looking at, I'm a venture capitalist. This is my day job, and we had an introduction to look at SpaceX as a financial investment. I thought, well, I definitely want to go see the rocket factory. I'll use this as an excuse to go see the rocket factory. And what I began to realize is that the level of inspiration that humans had about going into space, they're combined with some other things I'll talk about a bit later, but that inspiration brought together the greatest people in the aerospace industry, and it actually built a technology that nobody else had. And that the remaining engineering problems at that point, because I looked at it 6 years in, they were quite solvable. They were quite quite investable and financeable. But if he hadn't gotten those people together, if they hadn't been that inspired, if he had told people I'm building a game where people can shoot fish on their the Facebook page or something, he wouldn't have been able to get those same people. And now I see it day to day, such as on Friday when I went down to the Hawthorne headquarters at SpaceX, I saw the people who were troubleshooting the Dragon spacecraft, which now thankfully is working just fine. If you had seen the launch, the computers had put things on pause, and we had to go manually figure things out. Those, I very rarely see just that level of competence in solving a problem that's on a robot thousands of miles away. And I felt like I was invited up into the second floor to watch stuff. I felt like, okay, I don't even as their investor, I don't even have the right to be among these people. I should just let them fix this. They're going to figure this out. They're going to figure out how to get to the space station. They're going to figure out how to get to Mars because it's such an incredibly group of people. So that's what the inspiration of the problem gives you. If you pick a problem that's inspiring enough, you'll get the best people in the world. And they'll surmount the difficulties along the way. The final thing is picking a problem that's achievable. And I mean this in two different ways. And you've got to get the gradient correct here over the long arc of the future. So in the problems we think about here, the biggest problems facing the human race, how to solve those with technology, we're often thinking decades out. And in that case, the criteria of achievability, in some ways very light, and in some ways is very hard. It's the laws of physics. It's basically, is it physically possible to solve what you're planning on doing, in 10 years or 20 years out? But you do have to, you actually have to do your math and physics correctly. If you go and pick a problem, if it does not add up, if what you're doing does not add up, you will then start to screw up on your team because the people that'll be attracted to you, they'll be attracted to your problem, are the same ones who also didn't see that. And pretty soon you built the wrong people, even though what you're just talking about, oh, this is just something that's far out. It's, I just want to inspire people, and so I'm going to talk about something, I don't know, I'll pick something that I think is actually impossible, like time travel into the past. You're gonna attract the people and the investors who won't, even if in the current incarnation you might have an achievable problem. If what you're talking about in the future isn't achievable, you'll screw everything up. So it's actually a hard limit. And now the other part I think has been often very hard for all of us, and that's to pick something that's achievable in the present, achievable in the near term. And I want to pick up an example for that. So again, this looked like a dumb idea to me. It was a company called Facebook, or The Facebook at that time, and they had a social network for Harvard students. And I thought, well, there's already Friendster. It's huge. It's got millions of people using it. I don't think MySpace had been started. I think actually no, MySpace had been started. And I also had two other direct friends who were starting social networks. It was incredibly competitive, and they were doing this social network for Harvard, which was a tiny market, and maybe the Ivy League schools after that. But because of the achievability of it, because it was a dorm room company that was started and funded in a dorm, and because they built a product that works so well for that audience, which was the college undergraduate audience, because it was so achievable on so little resources, that company got a very clean and fast start. And it led to many successes that they built up for them. For instance, they didn't need a lot of money. So venture capitalists didn't have to take control of the company. That was very important, and Founders Fund helped Facebook with that by making sure that the board was controlled by the founders. But if they needed tons and tons of money, they'd have 5 venture capitalists on their board. So because they picked something achievable that they proved out early on, it allowed them to maintain control of the company, to build revenues early. And then at the same time, there was a long-term inspiring vision for Facebook, which is connecting everybody using social information and making our world more open. And we use those tools today. There's 1 billion people using Facebook, and there are billions of people using social networking tools around the world. So those are 3 different aspects. And actually, if you go into detail, and there's not enough time, but all 3 of those companies, PayPal, SpaceX, and Facebook were pretty good on all aspects. They were pretty good on picking strategic problems that were inspiring and that were short-term and long-term achievable, but pretty extreme on one of those aspects. So that's really what I look for in picking an important problem, and I hope that shed a bit of light on maybe some of the things we're considering today and some of the things in the world that need solutions. I've got a little bit of time for questions, and I'd like to open that up and pass the mic over to everybody over here. Aubrey DeGray. This is something I struggle with. It's as a role as a venture capitalist, it's called Founders Fund because we look to the founders for the inspiration and strategy. How much is our role in guiding the overall sets of problems? And as Founders Fund over the last few years, we have gotten more focused on that, on picking problems and saying, okay, we're interested in artificial intelligence. We're interested in curing aging. So I'll give you one, piece of focus, although I always turn this over to the entrepreneurs. It's not up to us to set it. I think that humans and computers are merging, and figuring out an achievable way to do that in the near term could be very, very powerful. So not something that's going to require you to cut your head open, or something that's going to require a new type of genetic engineering, but perhaps there's a way of creating a computer-human interface that has such a greater fluidity and bandwidth that you'll not see the difference between you and the computer. And in fact, we've made a few investments in that regard. Leap Motion is my most recent investment at Founders Fund, which is a high-resolution, high-speed, super cheap interface that can fit into a computer. You should check out the video on leapmotion.com. You can use your hands to control your computer without touching it, and it is so sensitive it can feel the pulse in your finger. Back there? Wow. First of all, read Mencius Moldbug. Don't worry about, if you disagree with some of the politics, but read him especially on the banking system. And the reason I like Mencius Moldbug and qualified reservations is that you've got to look at, you may have your vision of how the financial system should work, okay, but it is not, that sausage factory, that's not how it works. It is something that is run for the interests of particular people. I'm not saying this is bad, I'm just saying it's like any institution or company. So we found out that one of the most important aspects is that it's a cartel. It's a small club. The financial system is a small club of banks. They don't want you to get in, because if you can get in, you can compete with them. So there are regulations set up which seem, it's almost like the express purpose of you just not going and doing that. So you're not allowed to be a payment provider without registering in all 50 states first. You're not allowed to be a bank without a 2-year regulatory approval process. And I found that if you don't, so one problem I would find for someone starting that right now is what area can you get into in the financial system where you don't have to do all those licenses and apply and go in advance. Well, we really kind of did that. We were lucky in a way at PayPal. Early on, we didn't have enough finance people, and we simply didn't know that we had to apply for all those licenses. So we did them afterwards. But it wasn't circumvention, it was just raw ignorance. It's very difficult to circumvent the regulations because there are large, powerful institutions that will go up against you. In the case, for instance, of PayPal, Visa and MasterCard, which are the payment networks we had to connect up into, they are associations of banks. So to give you an example of how this works, well, we wanted to be a payment processor, and I worked on this innovative product that let you make an instant bank payment called Instant Transfer, but you had to have a credit card on file with us in case it didn't work. And MasterCard said, well, this is violating our regulations. You can't do this. And we said, well, which regulations is it violating? And they said, well, we can't tell you because you're not a member bank, and so you're not allowed to have the rule book. I'm not kidding. This is like when I was like, I quit. I mean, we figured it out eventually. Yes, back there. What excites me in the health sector is actually some of my earlier work was in genomics and in some of the investments I made. And it's coming to fruition. The cost of sequencing has gotten low enough that we can now use it to cure disease. I mean, we were like crossing our fingers, like we're not even sure if having all this information is going to be useful or not. But two companies in the Founders Fund portfolio, which they don't actually want to be talked about very publicly, but they're both profitable, and they both use sequencing to build their businesses and to cure and prevent disease. In one case, to prevent congenital defects. In the other case, potentially to cure cancer. So sequencing being out there and being cheap and available, it's huge. And the other one I want to throw out to you guys that I'm just looking for, and you know, nothing. I'm looking for someone to figure out the gene writing part. I'm looking for someone to figure out a gene therapy method that's actually going to be scalable and safe. Because once we have the genetic information, if we can fix it, that would be really nice. So very excited about that, and there's some early work we're doing, but we haven't seen anything very big. Yeah. Oh boy. I like the finance system. Don't pretend it's something that it's not, and don't pretend it's not working for certain people's interests. So I think that the patent system was invented for the small inventor, and that's not who it works for right now. And I am not sure what to do about that other than if you have a company, I'm going to bring it back down to the practical advice. You know, patent early and often and everything.
I should say the financial system.
I don't know. I'm gonna run out of time before I figure that one out. I would like that. But let's have that in small groups. It's like let's have a small group conversation. I just don't know about that one. Last one. Both. So fix it. So find something. I think Facebook's just a perfect example of this because it was a short-term, achievable, immediately provable problem, but then with an incredibly long mission that, you know, still, I mean, there's so many more things that can be done with a social network. Thanks, guys.